In 1965, a Scottish man named Angus Barbieri stopped eating. Not for a day, not for a week, for 382 days. Supervised by a medical team at the University of Dundee, he lost 276 pounds. His health markers improved across every metric. His doctors documented his mental clarity as remarkable. His case was published in the Postgraduate Medical Journal in 1973, one of the most extraordinary medically supervised fasts in recorded history. But 2,000 years before Angus Barbieri, in the Judean wilderness, a man fasted for 40 days. Not in a clinical setting, not with IV monitoring, and he emerged from that fast not broken, not collapsed, but ready for the most consequential 3 years in human history. The science of what the human body goes through during a 40-day fast is extraordinary. Today, we examine it carefully and honestly. Matthew 4:1-2 records it plainly. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. That final phrase, he was hungry, is one of the most physically vivid moments in the Gospels. This was not symbolic language. This was physiological reality. The text is telling us his body felt. A note of intellectual honesty before we go further. The text does not specify whether this was a water fast, where water is consumed, or a complete dry fast with no liquids at all. Most biblical scholars and theologians treat it as a water fast, since a total dry fast beyond 3 to 4 days is incompatible with human survival without direct divine intervention. What we can say is this. Whether or not water was consumed, 40 days of complete caloric deprivation is physiologically staggering, and the science of that process is what we examine here. At the end of those 40 days, Satan appears, and his first temptation, commanding stones to become bread, was a direct attack on physical hunger. Jesus, in deep physiological deprivation, responded with theological precision. Quoting Deuteronomy 8:3, "Man shall not live by bread alone." That level of clarity after 40 days deserves a closer look at what was happening inside the human body. Hours 0 to 24. Glycogen depletion. The body's first fuel source is glycogen, stored glucose held in the liver and skeletal muscle. This supply is exhausted in roughly 12 to 24 hours. As blood glucose drops, insulin drops with it. This transitional window is when most people experience the familiar symptoms of early fasting: mental fog, irritability, headaches. The body is switching fuel systems. Hours 24 to 72. Ketosis begins. As glycogen stores are depleted, the liver begins converting fatty acids into ketone bodies, primarily beta-hydroxybutyrate. This shift is metabolically significant. Research in both animal models and human subjects has consistently shown that ketone metabolism is associated with improvements in neurological function, including increases in brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, a protein that supports neuron health and cognitive performance. The brain does not shut down in ketosis. For many people, it sharpens. Days 3 through 7, deep ketosis. By day 3, many people report a distinct clearing of mental fog. Paradoxically, hunger often decreases during extended fasting because ghrelin, the hormone that drives hunger signals, actually drops as the fast continues. The body has found its alternate fuel system and settled into it. This physiological stability is what makes extended fasting survivable and, in many documented cases, remarkable. Autophagy, the body's cellular renewal process. In 2016, Japanese cell biologist Yoshinori Ohsumi received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for his foundational work identifying the molecular machinery behind autophagy, the process by which cells break down and recycle their own damaged or dysfunctional components. Ohsumi's Nobel work primarily concerned the genetic and molecular mechanisms of this process, largely in yeast models. What subsequent research has established, separately, is that extended fasting is one of the most potent known triggers for autophagy in the human body. Deprived of external nutrition, the body begins systematically identifying and dismantling damaged proteins and misfunctioning cellular structures, essentially performing internal maintenance at the cellular level. The scientific community's interest in this process, particularly in the context of aging and disease, has grown substantially since Ohsumi's foundational discoveries. Immune system regeneration. A 2014 study from the University of Southern California, led by Professor Valter Longo and published in Cell Stem Cell, found that prolonged fasting cycles triggered significant regeneration of immune cells through stem cell-based hematopoiesis, the production of new blood and immune cells from stem cell precursors. Longo described the mechanism as essentially prompting the body to rebuild parts of its immune system from the ground up. This research involved human subjects alongside animal models and has since been replicated in subsequent studies. Jesus was not fasting in a controlled environment. The Judean wilderness presents extreme thermal variation, temperatures that can swing between 40 and over 100 degrees Fahrenheit between night and day. No shelter, no nutrition. These conditions matter physiologically. The combination of caloric restriction with environmental thermal stress activates what researchers call hormesis, the biological principle by which moderate, controlled stress produces adaptive resilience. The body, when confronted with manageable adversity, responds by upregulating protective mechanisms, improved mitochondrial efficiency, enhanced stress response pathways, increased insulin sensitivity. Cold exposure, heat stress, and caloric restriction each independently demonstrate hormetic effects. Together, the combination is compounding. The wilderness was not simply the setting of the fast. It was, physiologically speaking, part of the mechanism. Matthew 4:3-11 records 3 specific temptations following 40 days of fasting. What strikes the careful observer is the quality of Jesus' responses. Each answer scripturally precise, emotionally contained, with no sign of cognitive breakdown. For context, the Minnesota Starvation Experiment, conducted by Ansel Keys in 1944, documented that semi-starvation, sustained caloric restriction without full fasting, produced severe cognitive impairment, emotional instability, and obsessive food-centered thinking in previously healthy male subjects. The distinction is critical. Those subjects were calorically restricted, but not in ketosis. They were in a metabolically destabilizing middle state, low fuel, high stress, no alternative energy system engaged. By day 40, Jesus, if we apply what we understand of extended fasting physiology, would have been in deep, stable ketosis, running on ketone bodies, with upregulated cellular maintenance processes, with paradoxically reduced hunger signaling. The physiology, at minimum, does not contradict the clarity we see in the gospel account. It may even illuminate it. Matthew 6:16-18, Jesus teaches his disciples not whether to fast, but how to fast. The language is instructive. When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do. When, not if. Fasting was assumed, expected, built into the rhythm of the spiritual life. Acts 13:2-3 and Acts 14:23 show the early church fasting before major decisions, before appointing leaders, before sending out missionaries. Isaiah 58:6 describes the fast God calls for, not empty ritual, but a practice connected to liberation and healing, for the self and for others. The biblical pattern is consistent. Fasting is not punishment. It is not starvation dressed in religious language. It is a deliberate, disciplined reorientation of the body, the mind, and the will. Walk through what the body undergoes across 40 days of fasting. Glycogen depletion within 24 hours. The fuel switch begins. Ketosis by day 3, an alternative, neurologically supportive fuel system. Ongoing cellular maintenance through autophagy, the body rebuilding itself from within. Immune regeneration through stem cell-based renewal, documented in peer-reviewed human research. Hormetic adaptation to environmental stress, resilience compounding through adversity. And at the end of it all, Matthew 4:11, then the devil left him, and angels came and attended him. He didn't collapse.